Doing well, thank you.
Tristan, that's all. Allison, good to see you. This is your place.
This is my turn.
Yeah, thanks for having us out.
Who's this?
This is Olympia.
Olympia.
Yeah.
Right.
This is her church.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Sarah.
Good to see you. Reverend Walker. Sarah.
Sarah.
Okay.
Mark, you get.
August, that's all.
Hillary.
Hi, Billy.
Nice to meet you.
Where would you like it, right here?
Wherever.
Okay, sounds good.
Thank you for being with us. We know
Of course.
we've been tag teaming with lots of different groups and different people, and we've already done the first thing, which is to meet everybody in the room. And introduce yourself. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Making time for us before the rally.
Of course.
We are all members of the Grand City Organizing Project, which is a nonpartisan organizing agency. We're comprised of lots of houses of faith, labor unions, individuals who are concerned about their communities, and we find that our work is to empower people to get involved with their community and to find their voice and to help the agents of change from the ground up. So there's we're from Manchester, Nashua. It's called the Southern Valley, which is westward of here, and I don't know about Pennsylvania. Anyway, but we invited you here, and particularly on this day, we know that there's just the brutality of the immigration policy. They're seeming to go forth. We do have questions, some are on immigration, some are on some other things. I want to first turn it over to Bruno, who's got some stories to tell and some questions.
Sure. Hi, my name is Bruno. I'm a board member of Chesapeake, and I work at the Immigration Advocate as a charity. So our question is, will you commit to stop family separations and community disruptions and stop funding DHS for mass deportations in your first 100 days as president?
Yes, and I hope to be able to, in addition to taking the action, make the case to the American public so that despite not just this president's rhetoric, but the rhetoric that preceded him and some of the reflexive, anxious response after 9/11 that was directed at immigrants that saw, just in 1 year of the Obama administration, 400,000 internal deportations from the United States of America, make the case that the very presence of immigrants, documented and undocumented, actually makes us safer and stronger and more secure. And coming from a community of immigrants myself, El Paso, Texas, where officially a quarter of those with whom I live were born in another country, unofficially the number has got to be much higher than that. We are one of the safest cities in the United States of America today. And it is because we treat one another with dignity and respect. Local law enforcement don't enforce immigration law. So everyone feels comfortable reporting a crime or working together to improve the safety of the community. So I want to make sure I give you a full answer. It's yes, but I'm also going to help the rest of America, many of whom can be forgiven for fearing immigrants based on what they've been told about immigrants by their very president, that this is in our best interest as a country. It benefits not just the immigrants and her family, it benefits all of us when we do the right thing.
I mean, does that entail pathway to citizenship?
Yes, a pathway to citizenship for dreamers, more than 1 million strong, who should be citizens right now. This is their true home country, but also their parents, the original dreamers, their brothers and sisters, and then 9 million more who are, for the vast majority of them, working the toughest jobs in America today. If lucky, making a minimum wage, very often making something less or nothing at all, because their status is used as leverage against them. I want them to be able to come forward, register with the government. Again, demonstrably makes us safer. We have a better idea of who is in our community, but they're also now able to contribute even more to our greatness and to the success of this country. And when they become citizens, even more so. And then the other part of this, in my opinion, is those who want to come to this country and reunite with family or work or go to school or flee persecution or crushing poverty and hunger, there has to be a safe, lawful path for them to do that. And so rewriting our laws to anticipate that, and also to acknowledge that immigration is not a problem, or if it is, it's the best possible problem we could have. We should be so lucky, and that should be reflected in our practices, our policies, and our laws. And so not only making right what is wrong within the country right now, but anticipating who will be coming here down the road and ensuring that we're ready for them to be here, for that to be a safe and successful journey for them and for this country.
Do we have time for a
Yeah,
story or
story.
Yeah.
Yeah. Allowing or I have the knowledge. They separate the families. Yeah.
Si quiere explicar en español, puedo entender y luego responder en español y luego en inglés.
Gracias. Tengo varios casos aquí en la comunidad. Por ejemplo, hay dos familias que el esposo era el soporte de la familia, ¿sí? Trabajaban en construcción, nosotros en landscaping, en lo que podían, y eran los que soportaban porque sus esposas ayudaban con lo de la casa, de las 3 niñas, la otra tenía también 3 niñas y todo. Y los deportaron, uno iba en el highway con su patrón y su gente, los pararon y al patrón le pidieron los papeles, y cuando le pidieron los papeles a los jóvenes que estaban, y a él se lo llevaron y lo deportaron.
A los padres,
Al papá.
al papá.
Lo deportaron y ella quedó sin soporte. Y ellos nunca, llevaban 15 años acá y tenían sus 3 niñas y nunca tenían que pedir ayuda del gobierno que les paguen la casa, que full stamp, no. Pero ya al ver que se le quitaron el soporte, la señora tuvo que pedir ayuda y toda la comunidad ayudó. Entonces ya ahí es un gran balance. Las niñas que quieren al papá se fueron para Estados Unidos, a las 2 familias, las mamás cogieron sus hijos y se fueron para allá, para México, las 2 eran de México. No duraron 3 meses allá, no pudieron durar 3 meses, porque ellas siendo americanas y todo, vieron la inseguridad que había allá, el miedo con sus hijas americanas allá, intentándose aplomar, no fueron capaces, tuvieron que regresar ellas aquí.
¿Y sus hijas tienen ciudadanía?
Son ciudadanas,
Okay.
son nacidas aquí. En las 2 familias, y hay una que trabaja en Silicon. Una de las mamás tuvo que regresar con sus hijas, ella quiere mucho a su esposo. El año pasado dijo, no, papi, no puedo, o sea, mi esposo no puede estar más acá, por la seguridad de las niñas y todo, nos toca irnos. Y ella se tuvo que venir y pedir trabajo, la otra también, buscando trabajos y ya dejando a las niñas que en babysitter, que a las otras grandecitas también intentando ayudar con lo de la casa. No está bien porque allá tienen que pedir ayudas, que que se soportaba. Y ellos pedían que le dieran el perdón de que ellos habían pasado habían pasado sin permiso aquí a Estados Unidos, habían hecho su familia, pero eran buenos papás. ¿Sí? Y la otra es los jóvenes que cruzan la frontera, que están en sus países, Salvador, Guatemala, y todos estos. Tengo ya varios jóvenes que están intentando pedir asilo político. Hay otros que los amigos perdieron la vida en el Río Bravo, perdieron la vida cruzando y estos jóvenes, porque no quisieron estar en sus países, porque vieron que no hay oportunidades de trabajo, de salud, de educación, nada. Y ver que los papás intentaban, ver, varios de ellos perdieron sus papás viniendo para acá. También murieron, también los cogieron, los deportaron. Entonces ellos ven a esos jóvenes de 17, 18, 14 años, 15 años se vienen. Y hay unos que alcanzaron a pasar y les estamos intentando y ellos quieren salir adelante, estamos intentando pedirle asilo político, pero no tienen las suficientes pruebas de decir, a mí me amenazaron porque ellos vinieron huyendo, porque las maras de allá, las pandillas, los querían coger a ellos, jóvenes de 14 años, de 15 años, que ya tienen 14 años, tienen que ir a trabajar de lo que trabajan.
Sí.
Ellos pasan por las fincas a ir a otra finca a coger el café o a hacer colecta de frutas, pero hay maras por ahí y los agarran y tienen que hacer lo que nosotros, y los golpean si no hacen lo suyo. Uno de ellos, él alcanzó a pasar, el hermano no, regresó y tenía que trabajar. Y lo cogieron las maras y ellos, no, mamá no quiere que nosotros, porque son indígenas, no quieren que nosotros hagamos algo yo mala cosa, no hablan bien, porque son indígenas, no hablan español ni inglés. Entonces allá les decían, no queremos hacer eso. Lo cogieron, le dieron una buena paliza, les cascaron y los intentaron ahogar. Y el hermano quedó ya muy mal, después de que lo intentaron ahogar, ya no puede venir para acá porque el hermano de 17 años quedó mal allá. El que estamos ayudando ahora, también le dieron sus perlas y todo, y así aporreado y alcanzó a pasar para acá. Entonces son cosas de que si los gobiernos dan, muchos han dado la oportunidad de que nosotros los diferentes soportes a la gente que queremos ayudar, y nos han dado la oportunidad de ayudarle a esta gente, a estas personas, a nosotros los indocumentados que nos han ayudado. Qué bonito que muchos tenemos ya que somos profesionales, en la NASA, que son profesionales de educación, profesores, psicólogos, en todos los ámbitos. Nosotros los inmigrantes en general, no solamente los latinos, todos los otros que venimos, cuando nos dan la oportunidad salimos adelante y queremos estar ahí. Y les damos gracias a los que pasan que ganan sus curules, que ganan sus cosas y no se olvidan de nosotros.
Sí. Y pienso que necesitamos involucrar este país en la política de mejorar las condiciones adentro de Honduras y El Salvador y Guatemala, para que estos jóvenes no necesitan salir, pero si en ese momento que están saliendo, cuando llegaron aquí en este país, en la frontera de los Estados Unidos y México, necesitamos tratar a ellos con respeto y dignidad. Necesario que ellos puedan pedir asilo aquí adentro de este país. Y además, la gente que están viviendo aquí ahorita por 15 o 20 años, trabajando en los trabajos más duros que tenemos en este país, criando su familia, pagando sus impuestos, no están recibiendo los beneficios, contribuyendo más que están tomando. Necesitamos proteger a ellos y cambiar nuestras leyes para reflejar sus contribuciones y la necesidad de tener más migración en este país, y la prioridad de reunir las familias que han separados ahorita. Yo quiero hacerlo como presidente y gracias por compartir sus historias. Gracias, Marta.
Do we have time for a couple more questions?
Yeah, I don't know who's keeping time for us. Yeah,
Okay,
sounds like it.
Two things. Hank, you had a question,
Yeah.
procedural, and so.
Well, we've seen the pictures from McAllen, Texas, with Vice President Pence and Senator Graham standing in that holding area with all of those folks who've been detained for at least 40 days,
Right.
unbathed, just horrible. So the question that has come up in our discussions is, with your experience in the House, as president, what would you do to curtail the and help defund federal agencies that create these cruel and inhuman conditions?
Yeah. I think a lot about this, and I was just listening to an interview with Representative Ocasio-Cortez, who's talking about disbanding the entire Department of Homeland Security. Others have talked about abolishing ICE. That may very well be a path to get to the goal. But I was in that McAllen Border Patrol station more than a year ago in the wake of the zero tolerance policy, where every single family that was apprehended in between ports of entry was separated. And I remember being in a cell full of women, very young mothers with their very young children, Olympia's age. and some of them too young, the mothers too young to be able to speak to me legally. They were 16, 17 years old. But I remember talking to one mother, asked her why she left Honduras, talked about some of these conditions that Martha described, and she did not know that within hours she would be separated from that daughter for whom she risked her life. And when we left, I asked the Border Patrol agent in charge, I said, how does that make you feel? That it's just devastating to hear that. You're a mother. She had told me about her kids. You're a mother as well. That's got to really hurt you. And she said something really interesting to me. She said, you know, I think we're doing these kids a favor. These are bad parents. Anyone who would subject their child to that journey, it is inherently bad. And we're going to basically save these kids. And you know, I've thought about that a lot since, and I've come to a place where I can not judge her for saying that. She's got a job to do, and she had to rationalize how she was able to do this. You know, are Germans inherently evil? How do humans, how does civilization, how does this country get to a place where you put kids in cages, where you justify the deaths of 6 children in our custody, where you separate families? So beyond the infrastructure and the agencies and the personnel, you know, a president who's described asylum seekers as an infestation, which is a very Third Reich, dehumanizing, subhuman way to make it okay to treat somebody less than human, or immigrants as rapists and criminals. I think a lot of that starts with the leadership and the permission given to follow our worst impulses or rationalize our worst practices and policies. So as president, I would like to very strongly talk about how immigrants are not something to be tolerated or even respected, but embraced because their very presence makes us stronger and more successful and safer and more secure. And then that has to follow in our practices. So not criminally prosecuting anyone who seeks asylum or shelter or safety in this country, immediately ending all for-profit contracts for immigrant detention. There's a profit motive to what we're doing in this country right now. Releasing the vast majority of those who are detained right now, and I mean almost, except for some exceptional cases, into a community-based family case management program. Having a new visa category so that this church or this community could sponsor refugees and asylum seekers without adding a dime to federal taxpayer obligation. This community, El Paso, Texas, can choose to stand up and welcome refugees. And we've got the capacity, we want to do the right thing. My administration will allow communities to be able to do that. So I do want to abolish the worst practices of ICE and DHS and CBP and HHS and Office of Refugee Resettlement, all of whom are culpable for what we're seeing right now. But I really think it demands a change in leadership at the top and an understanding in our country just how bad this has become. And if I could just say one thing, as bad as it is at this moment, I mentioned the more than 400,000 deportations in just 1 year of the Obama administration. I remember going to a deportation camp in Artesia, New Mexico. It's about a 3-hour drive from El Paso. This was in the Obama administration, and the ICE officials who were managing that facility said, our orders are to make this place so miserable that people self-deport, and they send a message back not to make this journey. And again, I heard people within the administration rationalizing this. It's a very dangerous journey. We don't want families to make it. We're going to make conditions so miserable here that they don't attempt this journey or these crossings. But we should also know that in the last 20 years, more than 8,000 people have died making the crossing into the United States. As we have built walls and fences and militarized, we have created profound suffering and death, not caged, not separated, but dead. So there's a, in my opinion, a much larger picture to how we have managed immigration and our connection to the rest of the world at the U.S.-Mexico border. I hope coming from there and having that perspective, I can help this country to get onto the right track when it comes to these issues.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Beto, we have another question. We're going to focus now on something that impacts, I know, Alice's congregation especially.
Yeah, so we have named this project of trying to meet with potential candidates, Love 2020, because we want to divest from hateful and harmful practices like the ones we were just talking about, and invest in love through humane policies for all people living in the United States. And there's all kinds of ways to do that. One of the ones we've been focusing on here in Nashua is affordable housing. We have a group of clergy who meet regularly to strategize about how to work for affordable housing here in our local community. Because we're in a bit of a crisis here in Nashua and in New Hampshire around housing. We have 4,000 fewer units than are needed. We have people from all walks of life who are struggling to get housing that they can afford here in Nashua. In my congregation that is probably on the more affluent end of Nashua, we have folks who stay in housing conditions that are terrible, that aren't kept up well. I know I had one congregant who stayed in a place with a roommate who didn't respect him and his life choices at all, and had to stay there because there was no other housing. We have folks who end up in a weekly housing facility, paying over $350 a week for a single room, who can never get ahead because they don't have a safe place to live. So that's a really important issue for us, and we're wondering if you are elected president, how will you work to divest from those inhumane policies, from the militarization of our border, from immigrant detention and deportation, and put money into areas like affordable housing?
Yeah. So we were talking about significantly reducing the detained population, detained in part because of the mandate passed by Congress for the number of beds, influenced, you've got to think, by the corporations who stand to benefit the longer you keep immigrants detained. We know that for 1/10 of the cost, we could run a family case management program that allows these asylum seekers to stay with family. Many of them have family deeper into the interior of the United States when they arrive at our border. Assigning them a family case management officer ensures that they're treated humanely. We pay a fraction of the cost, and we've seen, it was piloted 1 year in the Obama administration, a 100% show rate for court dates. So they're even doing a better job of following our laws. That produces a significant dividend, which, as you suggest, could be invested in communities and neighborhoods, housing, early childhood education, child care. Martha brought that up as a challenge for some of the immigrant communities that we're talking about right now. And then I also think there's a great opportunity for the federal government to invest housing dollars, perhaps conditional on local communities having inclusionary zoning policies. In other words, we don't decide that poor people are going to live in this part of town and wealthy people are going to live in this part of town or in this part of the state. I've heard from people in New Hampshire who talk about a 2-hour drive to get to jobs serving tourists. They cannot afford to live near those jobs, and a 2-hour drive back, not making enough to cover their cost of living, gas, repair to their vehicles. What if we said the federal government wants to help with community development block grant money, for example, or tax credit housing dollars in these communities, but you've got to allow folks who are lower income to live closer to those who make more right now. That's just an idea. Also investing in transportation, transit and light rail to make that easier to get to your job. Also to address impacts on climate. And then you just mentioned just the dignity of being able to live in a place where you're respected and feel comfortable and safe. Makes all the sense in the world to me. So yes, I think there's an enormous savings that we could apply to that. And even if we couldn't, I would want to make that investment because it's necessary for us to realize our full potential as a country. Thanks for asking, sir.
Thank you. We also just had someone join us sitting to your right, and I just think since you've taken the time to meet everybody.
Hi.
So,
I'm Beto.
Robert Campbell.
Nice to meet
So,
you.
Thank you. And thanks for the time. And actually, we usually begin with a prayer at the top of our meeting. I forgot that. So maybe we'll close with a prayer.
Let's do it.
Okay, let's pray. Spirit of love and light, thank you for this time together. Thank you for Beto's desire to serve and to create a vision for this country. Thank you for those who are on his team, working for him diligently, setting up sites like this and getting things prepared. We ask that you would steer us in the direction of compassion and mercy and justice, that we all may be ready to serve our neighbor, and that we may recognize that our neighbor is anyone. Thank you for this time. Give Beto the strength and his team to go forward, and with that we say, amen.
Amen.
And may the heat break.
Yes. He's from El Paso, so
I
he
know,
sounds
he's not breaking a sweat.
different kind of heat.
That's what I was-
Yes.